The rise, fall, and resurrection of the DC Extended Universe. It was meant to be a cinematic revolution. A universe filled with legendary superheroes, billion-dollar blockbusters, and a franchise to rival Marvel. Instead, it became one of Hollywood's greatest cautionary tales. The DC Extended Universe had all the ingredients to succeed: iconic characters, a passionate fanbase, and a decade of storytelling potential. But somehow, despite all of that, it never reached its full potential. From creative conflicts to box office failures, the DCU became a textbook example of how even the mightiest can fall. But now DC is rewriting its future, and with James Gunn at the helm, fans are daring to hope once again. So what went wrong? And more importantly, can DC finally get it right? Let's dive into the full rise, fall, and potential resurrection of the DC Cinematic Universe. The idea of a shared cinematic universe wasn't new when DC launched the DCU. Marvel had already cracked the code, bringing audiences interconnected stories that led to massive payoffs. Warner Brothers wanted to do the same, but they took a different approach. Instead of carefully building up their universe one movie at a time, they rushed into it. The result? A series of highs, lows, and head-scratching decisions that kept the franchise from ever truly taking off. But here's the twist: despite the struggles, DC never gave up. They kept experimenting, rebooting, and finding ways to stay relevant. And now, with the upcoming DC Universe reboot, the stakes have never been higher. If they succeed, it could be the comeback story of the decade. But if they fail, it might be the final nail in the coffin. The rise. The origin story, a promising start. The seeds of the DCU were sown in 2013 with Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. This film aimed to reintroduce Superman to a modern audience, presenting a more grounded and introspective hero. Its success set the stage for an interconnected universe, a strategy inspired by Marvel's cinematic achievements. Warner Brothers envisioned a rapid expansion, greenlighting Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice as the next pivotal installment. Behind the scenes, the studio's urgency to establish a shared universe led to accelerated timelines. Unlike Marvel's gradual build-up, the DCU sought to introduce multiple key characters swiftly. This approach was both ambitious and risky, aiming to captivate audiences with ensemble narratives early on. The casting of Ben Affleck as Batman and Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman generated significant buzz, signaling the franchise's commitment to bold choices. However, the pressure to compete in the superhero genre meant that creative decisions were often influenced by market trends and audience expectations. This environment fostered a sense of urgency that permeated the production process, influencing storytelling choices and character development. The desire to differentiate from competitors led to a darker, more somber tone, setting the DCU apart but also polarizing audiences. At San Diego Comic-Con 2013, Warner Brothers made an announcement that sent fans into a frenzy. They weren't just making a Superman sequel, they were introducing Batman, played by Ben Affleck, and setting the stage for an entire universe. Dawn of Justice was hyped as the battle of the century, the moment that would put DC on the same level as Marvel. The trailers were promising, the expectations were sky high, and fans couldn't wait. When the film finally hit theaters in 2016, it made an explosive debut at the box office. But then, something unexpected happened. After an impressive opening weekend, the film's numbers dropped hard. Critics tore it apart, calling it too dark, too messy, and too rushed. Instead of being DC's Avengers, it became a cautionary tale of what happens when you try to do too much, too soon. The fall. The beginning of the end, Suicide Squad's missed opportunity. If Batman vs Superman cracked the foundation, Suicide Squad was the wrecking ball. Warner Brothers wanted to create a fun, edgy, villain-led blockbuster, but the execution was a disaster. The film was plagued by behind-the-scenes conflicts, last-minute reshoots, and a final cut that felt nothing like its original vision. Instead of being a bold new direction for the DCU, it became a symbol of the studio's growing desperation. Jared Leto's Joker, once hyped as a game-changer, was ridiculed. The movie made money, but it left audiences frustrated, and DC's reputation took another hit. It was clear that something was wrong, but instead of slowing down, Warner Brothers kept pushing forward, straight into their biggest mistake yet: Justice League, the franchise breaker. In 2017, Justice League was supposed to be DC's answer to the Avengers. It had everything: Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, and Aquaman all in one film. But behind the scenes, chaos was brewing. Zack Snyder stepped away from the project due to personal tragedy, and Joss Whedon was brought in to finish the film. The result? A complete tonal shift. Gone were Snyder's signature visuals and epic storytelling. Instead, we got forced humor, cringeworthy dialogue, and a CGI-fueled Superman face that became an internet meme. The film bombed, barely making its budget back. At this point, Warner Brothers had no idea what to do. The DCU was crumbling and audiences were losing faith. Something had to change. The death of the DCU. By 2022, the DCU wasn't just struggling, it was on life support. Every attempt to fix the franchise only seemed to make things worse. Projects were announced and then mysteriously scrapped. Filmmakers left due to creative differences. The franchise had no clear direction, and audiences had no reason to stay invested. Even the characters people loved, like Henry Cavill's Superman and Ben Affleck's Batman, were caught in a cycle of uncertainty, with conflicting reports about whether they were staying or leaving. Then came the final insult, Batgirl. A completed movie, fully filmed and in post-production, was suddenly cancelled, never to be released. Warner Brothers Discovery, under new leadership, decided that shelving a finished film was a better financial move than releasing it. Fans were outraged. If a completed film with a rising star like Leslie Grace and a returning Michael Keaton as Batman wasn't safe, what hope did the rest of the DCU have? Meanwhile, The Flash, once touted as the film that would fix everything, turned into another disaster. Behind-the-scenes controversies with Ezra Miller made headlines, and when the movie finally hit theaters, it flopped hard. Even Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the last official DCU film, barely made a splash at the box office. By this point, even die-hard fans had checked out. The problem wasn't just bad movies, it was inconsistency. One minute, the studio seemed committed to certain actors and storylines. The next, they were rebooting everything. Marvel had built a universe with patience and careful planning, while the DCU felt like a chaotic mess of studio interference, rushed projects, and desperate course corrections. By the end of 2023, the writing was on the wall. The DCU, as it was originally conceived, was over. But in Hollywood, nothing ever stays dead for long. And just when it seemed like DC had hit rock bottom, a new plan emerged, one that promised to finally get it right. The resurrection. The DCU, a new beginning. In late 2022, Warner Brothers Discovery officially hit the reset button. They brought in two new visionaries, James Gunn, the creative mind behind Guardians of the Galaxy and the Suicide Squad, and Peter Safran, an experienced producer who had worked on some of DC's more successful projects. Together, they were given one mission: rebuild the DC universe from the ground up. Gunn and Safran revealed a carefully structured 10-year plan, divided into chapters, much like the phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Their first chapter, titled Gods and Monsters, would introduce a new Superman, a fresh take on Batman and Robin, and a lineup of lesser-known heroes that Gunn believed could become household names. One of their first major announcements was Superman Legacy, set for release in 2025. Unlike Henry Cavill's version, this Superman would be younger, still finding his place in the world. A true reboot rather than a continuation. The DCU would also introduce The Brave and the Bold, a Batman film focused on the father-son dynamic between Bruce Wayne and Damian Wayne. Other projects included Swamp Thing, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, and The Authority, showing that this reboot was embracing both classic and lesser-known characters. But Gunn and Safran weren't stopping at movies. They were also launching a slate of interconnected TV series, like Lanterns, focusing on the Green Lanterns, and Booster Gold, a comedic sci-fi adventure. Unlike the DCU's failed attempts at synergy, every project in the DCU would be part of the same continuity. No more confusion, no more disconnected spin-offs. Yet, there was still one lingering question. What would happen to the fan-favorite actors? Gunn confirmed that while some characters, like Viola Davis's Amanda Waller and John Cena's Peacemaker, would return, others would be recast. Henry Cavill, despite a brief return as Superman in Black Adam, was out for good. It was a bittersweet moment for fans, but the message was clear. This wasn't going to be a half-hearted reboot. For the first time in a decade, DC had a plan. A real, structured plan with a single creative vision guiding it. But plans are just that, plans. The real test will come when these movies start hitting theaters. Will the DCU finally become the cinematic universe fans have always wanted? Or is history doomed to repeat itself? One thing's for sure, if this reboot doesn't work, there may not be another chance. The future of DC movies is riding on this. And in the world of superheroes, every great comeback story needs a hero. Will James Gunn be the one to save DC? Or will the curse of the DCU live on? Let me know what you think in the comments. DC's journey has been a roller coaster of success and failure, but one thing is clear, the fans haven't given up. With the DCU's fresh start, the next decade will determine whether this is the comeback story Hollywood's been waiting for. So, do you think the DCU will finally get it right? Or is history doomed to repeat itself? Let's talk in the comments.